Everything you know about why the Titanic sank is wrong. Not slightly wrong. Fundamentally wrong. The iceberg did not rip a massive gash in the hull. The steel was not uniquely defective. The flooding was not inevitable the moment the ship struck. The Titanic sank because of something far smaller, far more preventable, and far more disturbing. 3 million rivets, and a decision to cut corners that cost 1,500 people their lives. This is what really sank the Titanic, and the evidence has been sitting on the ocean floor for over a century. By the end of this video, you will see the Titanic disaster completely differently. We are going to examine the forensic evidence recovered from the ocean floor, the metallurgical analysis that overturned a century of assumptions, the design flaw the builders knew about and built anyway, and the single cost-cutting decision made in a Belfast shipyard that sealed the fate of 1,500 people before the ship ever left port. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is peer-reviewed science from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the same organization that analyses aviation disasters and bridge collapses. The Titanic did not sink because of bad luck. It sank because of bad rivets. For decades, the story was simple. The ship was sailing too fast. It hit an iceberg. The iceberg tore a massive gash in the hull. The watertight compartments flooded. The ship sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes. This appeared in every book, every documentary, every film. There was just one problem. When scientists finally examined the wreck, it was not what they found. The Titanic was discovered in 1985 by Robert Ballard, lying 3,800 meters below the North Atlantic. Split in two. Debris scattered across 2 miles of ocean floor. Researchers began recovering physical pieces of the ship, steel plates, fixtures, and most importantly, rivets. The rivets are what changed everything. In 1998, metallurgist Tim Foka at the National Institute of Standards and Technology conducted the first forensic analysis of Titanic rivets recovered from the debris field. What he found overturned the entire accepted narrative. The iceberg did not tear a massive gash in the hull. Sonar mapping revealed only 6 thin tears, with a combined open area of approximately 1 square meter, 12 square feet. 12 square feet of damage sank the largest ship in the world. But why did 12 square feet cause catastrophic flooding across 5 compartments? The answer was in the rivets. The Titanic was held together by approximately 3 million rivets. Without them, the hull was just a collection of loose steel sheets. The rivets in the Titanic's bow and stern were made of wrought iron, not steel. The curved sections were too complex for riveting machines. Those sections had to be done by hand. And hand riveting required skilled workers. In 1909, when the Titanic was under construction at Harland and Wolff in Belfast, the demand for skilled riveters far exceeded supply. 3 major ships were being built simultaneously. Less experienced workers were brought in. Apprentices, men who had not yet mastered the technique. Foka's analysis found that the recovered rivets contained approximately 3 times the normal allowable amount of slag impurities left over from the smelting process, not fully removed during manufacturing. In normal conditions, slag is manageable, but in extremely cold temperatures like the -2-degree water of the North Atlantic on the 14th of April, 1912, slag makes iron brittle. Not just weaker, brittle, meaning instead of bending under stress, it fractures, shatters, like broken china, which is exactly what survivors described hearing when the Titanic struck the iceberg. A sound like breaking china running along the hull. That sound was not the iceberg tearing steel. It was 3 million rivets failing, one by one, along the seams of the hull. Now here is the part that makes this story truly disturbing. The builders knew, not that the ship would sink, but they knew the rivets in the bow and stern were of lower quality than those used in the center of the ship. Internal Harland and Wolff records show orders placed for lower-grade iron for the hand-riveted sections. Cost and deadline pressures drove the decision. The men who built the unsinkable ship knew they were using substandard materials in the most structurally critical parts of the hull, and they built it anyway. The rivet failure was not the only thing working against the Titanic that night. The Titanic's hull was divided into 16 watertight compartments, the basis for the unsinkable claim. It could stay afloat with 4 compartments flooded, even 5 in some conditions. But there was a problem nobody talked about publicly. The watertight compartments were only watertight horizontally, not vertically. The bulkheads dividing the compartments rose approximately 3 meters above the waterline. They did not extend to the upper decks, which meant once a compartment filled to the height of the bulkhead, water simply spilled over into the next one, like water overflowing from one glass into the next. As 5 compartments flooded and the bow sank, lower the tops of the bulkhead submerged. Water cascaded from compartment to compartment in exactly the way the designers had calculated it could not. The design that was supposed to save the ship was accelerating its destruction. Ship designer Thomas Andrews understood this the moment he surveyed the damage. His estimate of 1 to 2 hours was not a guess. He was calculating the exact rate at which water would cascade until the bow was so heavy the stern rose into the air. He built the ship. He knew its limits. And standing in those flooding corridors at midnight, he knew those limits had been exceeded. The Titanic was traveling at approximately 20.5 knots when it struck, nearly full speed. Captain Smith was not a reckless man. He was one of the most experienced ocean liner captains in the world. Slowing down for ice warnings was not standard practice in 1912. It was considered unnecessary, even unprofessional. There was also commercial pressure. White Star Line chairman J. Bruce Ismay was aboard. Multiple witnesses testified he had discussed arriving in New York ahead of schedule. Whether he directly pressured Smith remains disputed. What is not disputed, Smith received multiple ice warnings throughout April 14 and did not reduce speed. What is also not disputed, if the bow rivets had been made of steel rather than substandard wrought iron, the impact at that speed might not have caused catastrophic failure. The speed made the collision more likely. The rivets made the flooding inevitable. Together they killed 1,500 people. At 2:18 a.m. on April 15, witnesses in the lifeboats heard a deep, tearing roar, a thunderous crack. The Titanic broke in two. For decades, survivors who said the ship split apart were dismissed. The official British inquiry concluded the Titanic sank intact. When Ballard found the wreck in 1985, the bow and stern were separated by 600 meters of ocean floor. The survivors had been right all along. As the bow flooded and sank lower, the stern rose higher. The ship was bending at its middle under its own weight. The steel of the keel, the central spine, was under enormous stress. In the cold temperature, it fractured rather than deforming. Combined with the already weakened rivet seams, the hull tore apart in minutes. The stern rose briefly vertical, hundreds of people still clinging to it. Then it slipped beneath the surface at 2:20 a.m. 2 hours and 40 minutes. Start to finish. 12 square feet of rivet failure, a flawed bulkhead design, brittle steel in freezing water, full speed through an ice field. Not one catastrophic failure, a chain of smaller failures, each one alone survivable, together catastrophic. The Titanic is not a story about an iceberg. It is a story about what happens when confidence in a system exceeds the actual capability of that system. The ship was called unsinkable, and because it was called unsinkable, people made decisions based on that belief. Full speed, too few lifeboats, ignored ice warnings, substandard rivets to meet a deadline. Every single one of those decisions was made by human beings who genuinely believed the worst could not happen. The worst happened anyway. Catastrophic failures are almost never caused by one massive mistake. They are caused by a series of small, acceptable compromises, each one reasonable in isolation, that combine into something irreversible. 3 million rivets, each one slightly weaker than it should have been. 3 million small compromises, and 1,500 people paid for every single one of them. Do you think the builders of the Titanic were criminally responsible, or were they simply working within the standards and pressures of their time? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe to Iron Ink. Every week we go deeper into the ships the ocean refused to give back. Next week, the darkest shipwrecks in history. Ships that vanished without explanation, found decades later with no survivors and no answers. Iron Ink, where the ocean tells the truth, the deep never forgets.